How to elevate your confidence through self-compassion. I'm going to tell you a quick story about how one day my confidence was absolutely destroyed. So one day I remember I was getting on a sales call with someone, and I remember walking them through all the things that I was supposed to go through in my script, right? So listening to the obstacles, listening to what they wanted, listening to how the things that they desired would change their life. I was just basically doing the whole discovery call process with this potential client. And I remember when I got to the end and I had to tell them the price, I remember how scared I was. I remember feeling as if, man, they're going to reject me. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I remember all the confidence that I had went out the window when I had to tell them what the price was. And typically what tends to happen is they'll say, oh, I got to think about it, or it's too much, or I can't do it. So they come up with these objections. And I remember how scared I was to actually fight them on the objections. And I remember I just told them, okay, I guess I'll see you later. And I hung up and I felt like, man, I was just terrible. I felt like my confidence as an entrepreneur, as a salesman, as a therapist was just all out the window. And I felt really, really bad. And I actually felt so bad that I decided to actually send a message to one of my good friends who's in this space as well. And I remember he did something for me that actually, man, it really changed my life. I remember he got on the phone and he started to tell me how he actually had a very similar situation and how he was actually able to bounce back from it. And when he told me that story of him going through something very similar, I remember how much that helped me to not be so tough on myself. And I started to feel some of that confidence start to come back because I was actually able to normalize what I was going through. This is where self-compassion comes in handy. Self-compassion is the thing that gives us the strength to go and do tough things. That is the whole purpose. And when it comes to having confidence, it comes from our ability to do the things that scares us. This is also where the word courage comes from. So the ability to do something that frightens you no matter what. And that's what we want to talk about in this podcast. Now, before I go too further, I do want to define, what does self-compassion look like? Like, what is it? Okay. So self-compassion is simply your ability to treat yourself the same way that you would treat a friend if they were going through tough times. It's funny. We typically hear the things, or rather, we typically say that the words that we tell to a friend is typically not the words we would tell ourselves. And I even put it to you like this. We sometimes say negative things to ourselves in our mind that we wouldn't say to a friend. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is we tend to be more tougher on ourselves than we do with other people. The same advice that we give outwardly is very hard for us to take inwardly. And that is what self-compassion is all about. I need you guys to be able to go easy on yourselves when things don't go your way. And that's what we're going to talk about in this podcast episode. So before I get into point number 1 of how to boost your confidence through self-compassion, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can get more information like this absolutely free, even though you're listening to a trained and a licensed therapist. I want you guys to know that these tips that I'm giving, they're very valuable. And also, people pay for these tips, but you do not have to go through that by simply hitting the subscribe button and just following more episodes like this. So with that being said, let's get into point number 1. So self-compassion can actually be broken down into 3 different areas. And I'm going to go through them for you so that you can get an idea of what self-compassion is made up of. So one area of self-compassion involves self-kindness rather than self-judgment. So it's all the kind things that we're able to say to a friend. We want to take these things inwardly, as I said before, rather than saying all the hurtful, nasty things about our performance, about our outcomes, about our own thoughts and feelings. We want to be able to be kind and gentle to ourselves the same way that we would do it to a friend. So it's self-compassion versus self-judgment. That's area number 1. Area number 2 is common humanity versus isolation. Sometimes we forget that other people are going through tough times and have been through these tough times just like we have and have still had a life afterwards. There's this belief that when something bad happens, it's only happening to us. And people start to develop a woe is me way of mentality, a way of thinking, if you will. And one of the best things that you can do, and my friend did this for me as I talked about earlier, he actually shared that he went through something very similar, and it helped me to see that not being confident at all times, especially during the sales process or as an entrepreneur, is something that a lot of people go through, and yet they're still able to be successful. So that second level is common humanity versus isolation. And then the third area of self-compassion involves mindfulness versus over-identification. So what this means is your ability to actually objectively look at your thoughts and feelings without being so wrapped up inside of them. Sometimes people will fail at something and then over-identify with the failure as saying, I am a failure. And what that does is it robs you of all of your individuality. It robs you of all your power. Because what you want to be able to see is that when you fail, you are still you. You are still powerful and capable. And this is what a lot of people miss. This is why some people are able to fail and rise to the occasion next time, and why some people fail and they quit. These are the differences between the people that are successful and the people that aren't. It's their ability to be persistent. And what helps with that is your ability to be mindful about the thoughts, the feelings, the outcomes, and not be so wrapped up or over-identify with them, as I stated. So over-identification versus mindfulness. Now, the first technique to help you to build your confidence through self-compassion is an exercise that I love doing with all my clients. And it's a self-gratitude exercise. And we do this in 3 steps. So the first step I have my clients do is to write down all the values about themselves that they deeply appreciate. So for me, it's hard work, it's curiosity, and skillfulness. These are by far my 3 most valuable and most precious values that I appreciate about myself. So what I want you to do is I want you to figure out what are your 3 values that you deeply appreciate about who you are. Because trust me when I say, there's enough negativity out there for you to focus on. You have enough flaws and insecurities for you to harp on. But for this moment, I want you to take time to actually notice what things you actually bring to the table. Let's start there. The second step to this technique is to actually write a letter to yourself, thanking yourself for having these values. And in this letter, you can actually write how these values have helped change your life, how it's helped you to get out of a tough bind. For me, my hard work has helped me to get through some of the toughest times of my life, whether it be financially or even personally. This has been a skill that I can lay my hat on. It's a skill that I can rest on at night, if you will, knowing that everything's going to be okay because I'm not afraid of hard work. So that's how it's helped me. So what I want you to do is write a letter to yourself, thanking yourself for having these values. And then step number 3 for this technique is write down the list of people that you like to thank that has either modeled these values to you or they taught these values to you. We do this because we want to honor the people that have actually taken their time out of their life to show us why these values are important. And also what you can do is when you're in those moments of self-doubt, you can actually think about these people and what they will say to you to help you to move past this fear, move past this doubt, so that you can find the strength to go do that tough thing and thus get the confidence that you need, the confidence that you're looking for by being able to see that you can do hard things. Technique number 2, and this is a gut check. This is an emotional technique. It's a powerful one that I really love. So technique number 2 is called the little kid exercise. And what I have you guys do is actually take a moment to imagine a younger version of yourself sitting in the room with you. And when you do this, you are to imagine them at age 2, 3, or 4, so very young. And what we want to do is we want to take these thoughts that we're having, these feelings that we're experiencing, and we want to give them to the little kid. And what we want to do is we want to hear this little kid say out loud back to us these same thoughts, these same feelings that they're experiencing as if it's their own. And what your job is to do is actually give words of compassion, words of acceptance, words of encouragement to this little kid for these things that they're going through. Now, what's very important is that as you imagine hearing this kid speak to you, you need to imagine hearing them say these things in that little kid voice that they have. And the reason why is because we want to differentiate your voice from the little kid voice. Because for a lot of people, they will over-identify with that voice in their head with being their own voice. And to help separate the two, you need to start to give your mind a different voice, if you will. And in this case, we're giving voice. So you're going to speak back to them with words of encouragement and words of compassion. And then the third part of this technique is actually for you to simply embrace this young kid. You know, when I do this technique for myself, I actually pull up an old picture of me and I ask myself, if this little kid were to tell me that, you know, they're going through this, so let's say they're feeling afraid about this next step, or they feel that this next step is too hard or that it's impossible, I would quickly tell him, bro, you got this. And I probably gonna say, bro, quit tripping. You're the man. You have more confidence in you, more abilities in you than you ever can realize. That's the type of thing that I would say to them. And I want you guys to find out what it is that you would say. And I need you guys to embrace them, as I last said. So third step is to embrace them, whether it's through a hug, a high five, kiss on the cheek, whatever the case it may be. I need you to embrace them. The reason why we're doing this is because all those words that you told him, the signs of affection, the way you physically embrace this young man or this young woman, is the exact same way I need you to do that to yourself when you're going through a tough time. So what I need you to do is to actually buy into these thoughts, buy into these words that you're saying to this young man, to this young lady. Buy into them and move forward with that being your compass. And it'll give you the confidence that you need because you're being compassionate towards yourself. Technique number 3, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, and I actually love this one. And if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a reason why I had these guys on the wall behind me. But point number 3 is to simply imagine your role model sitting in the room with you. And what you would do is you would actually share with them some of the things that you're saying, some of the things that you're going through, that you're thinking. And then your job is to imagine what your role models will say to you as it relates to some of the things that you're going through. So for me, some of my role models is Denzel Washington. All right. So he's behind me. And also Kobe Bryant. I absolutely love those guys. And I love them because of their hard work and their skillfulness. So if I'm ever going through a tough time and I stop and ask, well, what would Denzel Washington say? Well, I think you watched enough Denzel Washington clips to know that he'll say something very empowering, something very motivating. What I do is I take that with me as I go down this dark lane of fear and self-doubt. And somehow, some way, I find myself on the other side of it. It's because I got Denzel backing me. I got Kobe backing me. And if you're spiritual, you can even imagine the big man upstairs backing you as well. So this technique is all about imagining what your role models will say to you. If you do that, you'll always find a way. Trust me. And technique number 4, the last one, it is simply a self-compassion letter. So what you're going to do in this is a simple 3-step process. As you can see, many of these techniques have 3 steps. It's because we want to keep it simple. So whenever you're going through a tough time, what we want to do is we want to stop keeping all that stuff up in our mind, whether it's through suppressing it or overthinking about it. And we want to take it out of our mind, put it on a sheet of paper so that we can look at it and also have that sense of distance from it. And the best way to do that is through a self-compassion letter. So step number 1, what you're going to do is you're going to write from the perspective of a compassionate friend. That's the first thing that you have to do. So I need you to imagine, what would a compassionate friend be thinking if they saw someone in trouble, if they saw one of their friends that's hurting and going through a tough time? I need you guys to put yourself in that place, and we need to begin to write from there. And what you're going to do is you're going to start writing by simply first addressing the situation that you're experiencing. So if you're someone that's experiencing a breakup, right? And let's say that breakup just absolutely shattered you. It took away all of your confidence. What I want you to do is I want you to address that issue head on. Don't try to avoid it. Don't try to escape it. One of the first steps actually is to actually acknowledge the pain that we're going through. And that's what you're going to do in this letter. You're going to start off by addressing or acknowledging this pain that you're going through, and you just simply write about that. And when you write about it, as I stated, 3rd area, self-compassion, right? So mindfulness versus over-identification. I don't want you to over-identify with these things that you're writing down. I want you just to simply write down the facts of what's going on. Write down the facts of what happened and even the facts of your thoughts, your feelings, okay? Write those down and be objective. Step number 2, what you need to do is you need to offer understanding and empathy as you're addressing these issues. After you wrote down all the things that you're struggling with, the things that you're fighting, all those things, once you write that down, you then need to simply write words of compassion. You need to write down words of empathy. You need to be able to give them a sense of life. Because here's the thing, and I said this earlier when I went through my sales call and I was absolutely crushed. When someone's able to understand you, when someone's able to simply reach out and say they've experienced something very similar, it does help us to not be so tough on ourselves. And this is where the common humanity starts to come in, okay? Because if we miss out on this, we start to feel isolated with these thoughts, these situations that have happened. And from there, we start to get almost even more deep in our thoughts, deep in our depression, deep in our anxieties. And what we want to do is we want to shine a light on these things. Now, after you do that, the last step that you need to do is just simply start to read this letter whenever you're feeling that you're not as confident as you want to be. When you're feeling as though that depression monster is coming out the closet, I need you guys to pull this letter out and get out of your own head and actually read this letter from the perspective of a compassionate friend. This will be your saving grace whenever you need it. If you skip this step, trust me when I say you will regret it. So real quick, I'm going to review the 4 techniques to help you to boost your confidence as a way through self-compassion. First step is a self-gratitude exercise. And again, this is where you write down 3 values that you deeply appreciate about yourself. The second step is the little kid exercise. And as I told you, feel free to pull out an old picture of yourself to help you to imagine that young boy or that young girl as they're going through some of the tough things that you're experiencing. The third technique is to imagine what your role models will say to you and then go with that as your advice, as your guidance. Stop relying on the negative thoughts to, let's say, persuade you, or stop listening to your mind all the time. Trust me, they don't always have your best interests at heart. But someone like Kobe, Denzel, or whoever your person is, they're going to look out for you. And I want you to lean on that advice from them. And then fourth, again, write a self-compassionate letter. And as you write this letter, you're writing it from the perspective of a compassionate friend. So I need you to step outside of yourself. And I need you to look at this letter as if you were speaking to a friend that was going through what you're going through. And what you're going to do is you're going to address the issues that they're going through. And then you're going to show empathy and understanding for what it is that they're going through. And then once you're finished, you are personally going to read this letter as if it came from a compassionate friend. If you follow these 4 steps, it'll give you the confidence and the strength to go back and do that hard thing that's scaring you right now. Trust me when I say this will work. So this is Coach Wells. Thank you for checking out this podcast. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can get more info like this. All right, I'll see you later.